Are you a caring communicator, or do you choose your words more carefully? Now, Mercury is the planet of thinking and communication. If you look at the solar system as a family, Mercury is kind of like the little brother as well as the sun's little buddy. If you look at the sun as how you look at things and how you intake information, then Mercury is kind of like explaining it to a lower conscious being, something kind of like a little kid, where you have to break it down so that if you were explaining it to everyone else, it can be built back up. Now, this video is on Mercury in Cancer. So if you look at it like Mercury is the individual aspect or the tool that you're using, then Cancer would be the lens that you're looking through to activate this tool, or to put it simply, the way you go about using this tool. Now, before we get into the actual traits and individual aspects of how people with this sign use it, we have to break down Mercury as well as Cancer. So, see you in the next section. Now, Mercury is the planet of thinking and communication, but that's kind of a broad label that you can put on this actual experience. The best way that I like to explain this is when you have that feeling of having a great idea, you can see the vision, you can feel what this experience would look like, but when it comes to actually speaking or relaying what that experience might be in the form of information, you can't quite do it. And then you go, maybe this wasn't as good of an idea as I thought, which is potentially true, but it's also potentially not. Either way, you really don't know because you haven't gone through the experience physically enough or gone through it mentally enough to where you can develop little tools, tips, tricks, and actual verbalized and tangible experience to break it down to other people so they can actually enter the mental space of what that experience might be like. Which is why Mercury needs to feel things. Mercury deals with the nervous system. Mercury loves the signs of Gemini and Virgo, which are both very thought-based and practicalized signs. They need to touch, they need to feel, they need to go through many different aspects of that feeling or what that feeling in terms of experience could lead to, so that it has context and tangible ideas that it formed on its own in order to relay it to other people. So the long and the short of it is you need to experience things before you can actually explain them. So if you have a good feeling that breaks down why a thought might be so good, or why a vision might be so good, or why a feeling may be so good, experience it before you write it off. Now let's talk about Cancer and the lens that goes over Mercury. Now, when talking about Cancer, we're talking about the lens we're looking through for this actual planetary energy. You can also look at it like the way that you're going about doing things. So with that in mind, let's talk about Cancer, right? So as I mentioned in the beginning, this is the caring sign, the careful sign, the comfortable sign. A lot of these calming, comfortable, cooling C words can actually lead you to the vibration of Cancer itself. Now to get specific, Cancer is the cardinal water sign. This means that it creates new ways as well as initiating new ways of feeling and adding emotion to things. Now you have to remember, there's a huge difference between feeling and emotion. A feeling is something that you have thousands, billions, trillions, and millions of all day, every day, but you may not pay as much attention to it because you haven't defined it for yourself, or it's not pertinent at the moment. An emotion is a feeling that you tie some type of meaning to. So with that being said, Cancer is a very emotional sign. Now, where was Cancer born, and how does that affect its life moving on through the energies that we experience now? So, Cancer was born from the 4th house. This is the house of home life, caring, what's comfortable to you. And when you're looking on the body, the 4th house is actually aligned with the heart chakra. One might say it's one and the same. So this is a lot of grandma energy, caring energy, homely energy. And this is what Cancer grew up in, so this is what it will kind of emulate throughout its life here on Earth, everywhere, basically any experience that it angles throughout space. Now, with that being the case, what planetary energy does this sign actually angle? So, starting from the bottom, this sign hates Martian energy. It falls in Mars. Mars would rather be asleep than have to do anything with this energy. So that's what it does, which is why Mars and Cancer people aren't very motivated, and it takes a lot to get them going because they actually have to care about what they're doing. Now, moving on up, Cancer doesn't really like Saturn. Saturn is where it feels like it has to work. It has to use the tools that it has to get the job done. Cancers are known for their shells, right? So if Saturn is the planet of boundaries, restrictions, limits, but more important, structure, Cancer probably doesn't like creating structure because that would mean that it has no shell. So when it's actually going through this experience, Cancer may be a little clawy, it may be a little grouchy, it may be a little unhappy because it has to build something that it wants to create very few times in its life and move on. Now, the next planet that Cancer feels at home in, it feels comfortable in, is the Moon. The Moon is the planet of, well, it's not a planet, it's more of a moon, really, but it's, for lack of a better term, it's the planet of relaxation, reflection, comfortability. This is why Cancer feels at home in the Moon. Now, Cancer's favorite planet beyond belief is Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet of expansion through experience, and it is more or less the explorer's planet because it likes to create new vibes. That is the highest vibration of Jupiter, which is Cancer, being able to initiate and create new vibrations, which are in fact the source of experience at this level of life in terms of what we actually can perceive. You know, your sixth sense isn't necessarily just a feeling. You have a seventh sense too, which is feeling and thinking. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you just get those thoughts or those feelings just randomly shot at you, think about the level of experience that grows on top of just catching a feeling or catching a vibe. It can lead you down an entire path that may take you through your whole goddamn business ventures of your 30s. Who knows what vibes can do? This is how creative and how high vibrational Cancer can really be. And some may say it's the most powerful sign, since in this world it kind of acts as the source of experience. Now, with all that being said, we kind of have a groundwork for understanding Cancer. So let's put the vibe and the lens together, and I'll meet you in the next session where we actually talk about the traits and all the other stuff tied to a Mercury and Cancer sign. So, after knowing all that and digesting all that, Cancer is the caring communicator. Now, what does that mean, right? This brings us back to the initial questions that I proposed. Are you a careful communicator, or are you a caring communicator? Now, if you break that down a little bit, think about how your mind positions you to do these things. If you're so careful or caring, what are you doing at the end of the day, and what is that leading you to do with your energy and your spirit? This can push you to become very attached to experiences, very attached to people, very attached to the relationships, very attached to literally almost every aspect of life you can possibly think of, because you're always in a position of caring or being careful. And this kind of answers the question of why. Because you feel like everything should be a homely connection, or at least you think you do, because we're talking about Mercury, right? So we have to be very careful of this. And what I've noticed helps a lot with this energy and this sign is that you need to isolate your intentions throughout things. Now, bear in mind, if you're an older person and you've been through these experiences quite a lot, you may have already figured this out in a subconscious sense, to where you don't necessarily attach yourself to everything, because, to be honest with you, you don't have to go through life knowing all this stuff. It helps. People can see attachment on you. People can see attachment on the experiences that you have with them. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't take as much as people think to say, hey, you're a little extra attached. Why are you so attached? And for you to go, maybe I am pretty attached, blah, 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 you know? And you fix that little subconscious wiring you have going on within yourself on your own, right? But just think about what knowing this can do. The place, the space, and the location that you're trying to get to doesn't always matter. It's how you get there that matters. And if this helps you get to that space sooner rather than later, then why not? Because if you don't go through learning this process of realizing how your mind frame and how your mind works can kind of lead you to become very attached to almost anything you experience, you can go down a long and sorrowful path of really just neglecting your own needs and yourself and damn near everything about yourself. because you're so focused on caring and being careful of everything else around you that you can actually go through neglecting your own inner world. And Cancer being more of a feeling sign, you already have an inner world as is. So if you go through all this and dedicate yourself through attaching your emotional state and your state of being to everything else going on outside of you, what will you become? You will literally only be a shell, neglecting to actually experience that Saturnian-like work for building up your own internal world. When you just really are trying to shielding yourself and keeping yourself from just the outside world via building walls up. And when you build walls up, you box the world out from what you're already trying to do, which is really boxing yourself out of yourself. So the best message I can really give to anyone that has a strong Cancer alignment is that you're gonna go through heartbreak anyway. It might be a lot better if you just tear down the walls on their own, so you don't have to go through that heartbreak of excessive attachment, shielding yourself, and then having to relearn it and go through it all over again.
Now, what I neglected to mention about Mercury is that it doesn't really like Cancer that much. And in fact, once you hear about how much it doesn't like Cancer, you'll begin to understand how and why and what are the telltale signs and what can lead you to why it really doesn't like Cancer. So, first things first, Mercury and the planet Jupiter are pretty much at opposite spectrums of the energy, right? Jupiter's more expansive through experience, it's much more of a feeler, while Mercury is much more of a thinker and a communicator, right? So, if Cancer is the highest vibration of Jupiter, then that means it's naturally the lowest vibration of Mercury. And why is that? Mercury doesn't really deal with creating vibes. It doesn't deal with vibes that well in general. Mercury likes more practicality, more thinking, more dynamic thinking that can become more efficient over time and categorize many things at a given time. So with that being said, let's kind of get into how Mercury and Cancer people conversate and what are their speech patterns are like, so you can sort of understand how and why Mercury doesn't really like this and what you need to manage. Now let's talk about the low vibrational communication style of a Mercury and Cancer person, and then we'll segue over to the higher vibrational stuff. So when you're in more of a low vibrational Mercury and Cancer state, you may talk very quietly, you won't seem very passionate or caring about what you say, and you'll kind of be annoyed that you have to speak. Now, if you are in a position where you're doing something like public speaking and you can already tell the vibes are going south, you may start trying to say two things twice and maybe even trying to over-explain what you have going on. Because when you are in this space, caring and being all up on all of these emotional frequencies and being tuned into having to think about what people are feeling at a given moment based off what you're saying and trying to modulate, moderate, and modify what that is so you can get your best result can be a lot to manage in the space of thinking and thought. So when you start doing this, you may kind of get into an overload space if you're just like, hi, I'm trying to say this and that at the same time. I'm trying to merge two words together, and you're going to start sounding like the because you're saying two words at the same time, and more often than not, it will have that kind of th sound, because when you understand how Jupiter sort of operates, Jupiter is a lot like, it likes esoteric fire, right? So it likes vision, it likes feeling. So when you're trying to segue out of a negative Cancer space, and you're trying to segue to a higher space, you get those thud sounds because Cancer will be pushing you towards more of that building back up, which it doesn't really like, and it's trying to build back up so we can get back to its comfortable standing and comfortable platform, so we can actually enjoy all of these experiences in that more high vibrational Jupiter space. It looks a lot more like thunder and lightning in a way, because that's what esoteric fire is. It's that light bulb moment, that aha moment, and that's sort of what Cancer likes to create, which is why it always wants to get back to that space, which is why you may sort of get thuds in your speech, because you're not getting any spark. All you're getting is thunder, because you're too busy absorbing all that negative energy, focusing on these negative intentions, and not really creating anew, if that makes any sense. Now, if we talk about Mercury and Cancer in more of a higher vibrational state, this is where we get that excited feeling, that caring feeling. And instead of focusing and receiving everybody else's negative energy or positive energy, if you really care about what you're talking about and you have all this Cancer energy built up, you will literally start to control the vibration of the room, the vibration of whatever space you're in at that moment, for lack of a better term. This is where you really care about what you're experiencing, and people can literally see the calm, caring, the cool vibration just off of you, and it will literally soak and ripple throughout the room. And while it is possibly a rare space for you to achieve, and it takes a lot of work to get there, that may be hard, you might have to have a lot of trial and tribulation, it's so great when you get there, because you'll literally start seeing people not even caring about what you're saying. They'll literally just be so soaked up in the vibe of what you're saying that the actual content doesn't even matter. And that's a very cool skill. So why this is such an impressive skill is because you used one of the worst tools possible to create a literal vibe for the room. You put in so much thought, so much communicational efforts, and you just literally verbally vibrated a feeling into existence that makes people completely forget about the contents of what you're saying. They were just so caught up by the vibe itself that they were just amazed. And this is the power that a Mercury and Cancer person has. It may be such a terrible tool to actually get to this point, but it is an amazing feat once you do it. You literally have the ability to speak on vibes. And it may be technical, it may not be, it depends on you for how you do it. But if you can literally get into that space of really being so calm and caring about what you're saying, it'll appear like you're speaking in tongues from a vibrational standpoint, but it doesn't exactly matter what you say. Just know that the high vibrational pattern of a Mercury and Cancer person is so amazing that it's worth trying for, no matter how hard it actually is.
So now that we've proverbially sifted through the weeds of what we actually have going on and what Mercury and Cancers actually have to go through, you'll understand that there are a lot of operational variables with this sign. So bringing it back to where we started, of if you are a caring or careful communicator, you'll know that it really doesn't matter, and that isolating your intentions is the only true answer. Because whether you like it or not, you've picked a sign that Mercury hates beyond belief and would rather die than experience. And why this comes from the level of information that you actually have to process in order to experience this sign. It's so much, and isolating your intentions can basically help you focus so that you can at least cut out some of the peripheral information to begin with. Well, that's pretty much it for Mercury. I'll see you on Venus.